Okay, we have a few of the questions from the readiness assurance process quiz from today to talk about. The first one was missed. How will grades in the course be assigned? This one comes from the course policies document that was linked to the syllabus handout, and grades will be assigned based on a strict scale relating points earned to letter grades as described in the syllabus. Pretty close, but not quite. Curve, no. Grades will be assigned based on a scale relating points earned to letter grades with the possibility of an upward bump based on effort. That's exactly it. I'll show you where that comes from. And then this, I don't do that gamified stuff. In this document that I've got pasted into the screencast, it's the very last item from that policies document. And notice that 37 points, you should have all of those if you stay engaged. The other 63 points are a little harder, but you've got that buffer to work with. And then what's more, professor reserves the right to bump hardworking students a half a grade at the end of the semester. All right, that's pretty cut and dried. Now, the next question that any team had a problem with was about Pacific University. And why does Pacific University offer introductory economics classes for 50 to 60 students instead of smaller classes? Pacific University administrators have considered both the advantages of smaller classes against the expense. That's actually should have considered the advantages of smaller classes, as well as, here I'm editing my own text. I should have done that before I printed the quiz. Anyway, but clearly this one is correct. Let's see, research has demonstrated that 55 students, actually the literature hasn't demonstrated any such thing. Surveys indicate students like larger classes. I actually think we have a lot of fun in this class, but whether students like it or not for its class size, I'm not sure. And certainly that isn't in the research and wasn't cited in the material you had to read. Optimal class size for this course is 100 plus, but we don't have classrooms. No, generally speaking, as the reading discusses, the optimal class size might be 1. But the expense of that is that one person has to pay the whole salary of the teacher, as well as for the infrastructure of the room, etc. And that would make for a very, very, very expensive college education. And so when you consider the costs as well as the benefits, classes that are bigger than 1 are common. And you've got a lot of fixed costs, notably the professor's time, the physical plant is paid for, and if you've got some big rooms, that makes it easy to expand a class size. And the variable costs go up only very little with students. Anyway, for that reason, we see big classes, bigger than optimal probably. And although, again, for the way I teach and the way this class seems to work, I think it's just about right. I don't think having a tiny class would really improve much. And also, I would say having hundreds of students in a class wouldn't be as good. I think we're pretty close to right for the way I like to teach. If all the world's resources were to magically increase 100-fold, then economics would no longer be relevant, scarcity would disappear, trade-offs would become unnecessary, people would still have to make trade-offs. And the answer is people would still have to make trade-offs. And there's a couple ways to answer that. One is just to imagine Bill and Melinda Gates. They've got umpteen $1 billion, way more than 100 times what I have. I don't even want to think about the multiplier there. It's a lot more than I have or will ever have. And yet, they have only so many hours in the day. They actually have, with their charities, they've targeted their recipients of their charity very narrowly so that they can make a big impact rather than spreading themselves thin, even when you're talking about vast quantities of resources. Well, the U.S. government's budget is, I don't know, $4 trillion a year, and they still fight about $5 billion for border security. So, no matter how big the pie gets, there are still limits to what you can do with it. And spending $5 billion more in one area means $5 billion less in another. That's one way to explain it. The other one is just to imagine if we had a too good economy. Let's think of bicycles and pies. And because of the resources of the economy, we had a production possibility curve like that. Well, even if that possibility curve moved way out, I haven't done it 100-fold because I don't have a big enough screen, but a lot of things that were impossible with the small production possibility frontier now are possible, but there's still plenty of things that are still unattainable. And what's more, if you're operating an efficient point, to move to a different point, you're going to have to give up some pie to get more bicycles. So these trade-offs are a difficult fact of life, and economics is what helps us make better decisions regarding those trade-offs.